Have you ever felt like someone was super reliant on you for their self-worth, for their happiness, for their just well-being in general? And on the flip side, have you ever been in that position where you are downright embarrassing yourself so that you can care about someone else because you just have to? If you have been there, then hey, we girls, we sisters, because I've been there too. It's called codependency, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, let me introduce myself. My name is Gracesandra. I'm an activist, a mental health advocate, and a fierce advocate for Black and brown women of color, which is why I started the Out Here Trying to Survive platform in general, the YouTube channel, and this podcast that you're listening to right now. This podcast is a hope-oriented storytelling space, and mostly a warm hug of solidarity from me to you, and a celebration of our resilience thus far. Let's get started. You've probably been in a codependent relationship without even knowing it, without even having words for it. I was in a codependent relationship once where it was sucking the life force out of me, but I had no idea what was going on. So I'm super excited to talk about this today, mostly because I think it's something that we could go a lot deeper. I'm really doing an overview today, but it's just something that so many women, we are socialized to be codependent, and I cannot wait to talk about how this intersects with being a Black and brown woman of color and how we are expected to be codependent. But before we do that, let's have a quick break from our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Grace, actually Memoirs of Faith, Love, Loss, and Black Womanhood, written by me, Gracesandra. This is available in Kindle version or paperback on Amazon. I will have the link in the show notes. So before we get started, I want to do a quick little current event of the day thought. I just heard of the third woman coming forward to basically accuse Diddy of sexual assault in some way. If you have been living under a rock, then you didn't know about what happened with him and Cassie and her settling. And I'm briefly going to hit on this, but I really think that it's well past time for a hip hop rap culture Me Too movement of sorts. I truly hope that every single woman coming forward gets the justice they deserve. Let's listen to this quote of the day. This is from Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle. He's been tearing it up on Facebook, but he says, "The Titanic sustained a traumatic injury. It hit an iceberg, but the iceberg was well behind it by the time the real pain and chaos of its injury became apparent and overwhelming. That's how trauma works in people too. The trauma may be years past by the time we start to sink." I was like, that is poignant than a mother, because that is literally what's happened in my life in so many ways, particularly about the childhood sexual abuse I endured. I think my boat didn't really start to sink until, I would say, 20, maybe even 30 years after the initial abuse. I just thought that was very interesting for all of the haters out there who were talking about Cassie took too long and other women who've taken too long. There is something that happened to me where I was sexually assaulted that I still haven't ever reported. And I don't even know if I ever will, because I think I would come under some fire that I don't even really want to. I don't even want to come under fire because he is in Hollywood. He's a Hollywood person, and I don't even know what would happen to me. It's been how many years? It's been over 10 years. So the statute of limitations is gone in Michigan where I am. So if I were to come forward, everybody would be like, "Oh, it's just a money grab. It's just a money grab." I don't want the drama. I wouldn't want the drama, the pain, the speculation, the, oh, she's lying. Oh, she's just coming forward because he got this movie. Now he got this movie. No, thank you. So I just wanted to add that little perspective, because I think sometimes women included, but especially men, get really angry at women as if the time that's went by not reporting right away delegitimizes the assault that's happened. And it's just not that. It's just not that. A lot of times, like if you look at what happened with the women who came forward in the Cosby case, these women were attacked, maligned. Some of them had death threats. Some of them had to go into hiding because they dared to share what happened with Cosby. It ain't worth it. A lot of times it ain't worth it. And Cassie came forward, and thankfully she did get a lot of support in the post Me Too moment we're still living in. But for the most part, what I saw in the shade room and a lot of other places was just a lot of nonsense. A lot of nonsense, talking so poorly and horribly about her, and the disbelief. And now what people are saying about these 2 and 3 other women who've come forward with claims of abuse from Diddy. It's just, it doesn't seem like it's a safe environment at this current cultural trajectory to disclose sexual assault. So a lot of us just move on. Okay, I'm going to read something that I wrote on my Facebook. I just did a coaching session with a woman attempting to escape domestic violence from a prominent, wealthy, well-respected family man. I'm continuously disgusted at the things women have to do and willingly choose to do to protect our children from these monsters. Protecting ourselves is often the afterthought. Planning to leave a powerful man often takes years. There's women I started coaching in 2020 who are only now finally free. As an aside, all this talk about Cassie taking too long to talk, asking for too much money, etc. 98% of the population have no idea what goes into leaving a multi-billionaire psychopath nor abuse dynamics, let alone the fact that Cassie was 19 years old when this whole thing got started, and I'm surprised she got out alive. After meeting with several women in the last 3 years doing narc abuse coaching, I'm still occasionally surprised at just how gruesome it is. I will forever advocate for this. There's 2 people in the world who know the full extent of what I went through, and after that, frankly, it's pretty hard to believe. Because if people were really taking my claims seriously, they would have moved in to do something different. I truly believe that. I wish I could file a case for $30 million. I surely would. Believe women. Hashtag narcissistic abuse awareness. I'm excited about the hip hop Me Too. Okay. I'm very, very excited about it moving forward. And that's all I got to say about that. Don't forget, I am sharing a video version of this podcast on my YouTube channel, Out Here Trying to Survive. So if you'd rather see me talk, if you're more of a visual learner, come check me out there. And if you're on YouTube, hey girl, hey, thanks for watching. And while you're here, just go ahead, subscribe, go ahead, leave me a like, go ahead, leave a comment, tell me what your favorite part of the episode was, and go ahead and share it because you know you want to. All right, let's talk about codependency, y'all, and how it affects us and what we can do to get a little bit of a handle on this situation. I do want to recommend the book Codependent No More by Melanie Beattie, or is it Beetle? I can't remember. It's one of those, but I will of course link it in the show notes. I have learned so much from that book and other people, my therapist, etc. I've talked about codependency with my girlies, with everybody, because again, I believe we're socialized into this. But again, let's just talk about what it is. So first of all, codependency is where one person becomes very overly dependent on someone else for their sense of self, for their sense of self-worth, and for their sense of happiness. Often, like a lot of things, stems from our childhood trauma, and it manifests in a ton of ways. People pleasing, enabling, losing yourself in a relationship. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you're just giving and giving and giving to the point that you don't even really know who you are anymore? That's a little bit of what that people-pleasing, codependent mindset looks like. People who are codependent or who struggle with codependent things tend to prioritize others before themselves, women, and we also neglect our own sense of self in the process, women. Now, I'm not saying that men don't do this, but this podcast ain't for men. This podcast is for us, so we're going to talk about us. One time, my best friend, Jean, I'm going to bring her up a lot because I learned so much from her. She actually is a licensed clinical psychologist, but before that, we've been friends for like almost 30 years or so, maybe. It's been a long time. And we were talking about this stuff, I feel like long before she was a psychiatrist, but whatever. Anyway, I remember one time she said to me, like, don't you feel like in every area of your life you were formed as a little girl to see the men around you as higher than you, better than you, like to orient yourself to them, to figure out how to make them happy, how to keep them comfortable, how to help them not get angry, how to help them not experience the consequences of their anger, how to stop them from sexually assaulting us, how to stop them from beating us. This long list she produced, and it was like the first time in my life where I was like, oh my God, yes, you're right. I have felt that orientation towards men my whole life. We basically are being taught to be dependent on them in every way. Now, thankfully, I do feel like Gen Z is a different generation. Like I have a 7-year-old daughter. I'm raising her different. I'm helping her to see like, hey, you don't have to. I actually have literally said that you don't have to do things to make your father happy. That is not your goal in life, is to do things that he will be happy with, down to the smallest details, y'all. Like the other day, she wanted to wear some strawberry earrings. And she was like, please don't tell Dad. And I was like, Revy, he's going to see your earrings when he picks you up from the birthday party or whatever. And she was like, oh. And she was like really nervous. And I was like, what's the problem? And she was like, I don't think Dad's going to like these earrings. And I was like, oh my God, like she's 7 years old already thinking about a man in her life. What if he doesn't like her earrings? Ooh, child. So I think that's actually a perfect example of how I don't think anybody said that to her. I don't think her dad ever said that to her. I don't think he did. I could ask him, but it's just a wild world we live in. I do think that, like I was saying, Gen Z is on this different trajectory, but I'm Gen X. I'm either a very young Gen X or I'm a very old millennial. I think I'm right in between. But whatever the case may be, as a Gen Xer, let's just say in that because I was born in 76, we were definitely not having conversations with our moms about how to be strong, powerful, independent women who don't care about a man and don't care about a man's opinions. Like, it's actually the opposite. It's like, how do you keep these men in your life happy? Father, brother, cousin, uncle, boyfriend, love interest, sex partner, husband, like, these men in your life, you need to sacrifice yourself for them. That was the message that I think women of our age range that we are constantly bombarded with as kids. And thankfully, Lord Jesus, thankfully, we are moving away into something else. Something that a lot of us haven't really considered is that this has a really deep impact on our emotional well-being for us to be constantly oriented towards the men in our lives. Particularly, I'm going to say in our romantic relationships. But when I look back, I was with someone who was very codependent on me. And I didn't really realize it until after it was over. It was a long-term serious relationship. After it was over, several years later, we had a healing conversation about the what happened and I hurt you, you hurt me, blah, 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 that whole thing. And I will never forget, he said, I'm really sorry that I was so codependent on you. And he was like, I didn't really realize until later just how destructive that can be for a relationship. He was like, I'm sorry, because I've realized that it's really hard on the person who has the person being codependent on them. And it's just interesting. I was really thankful that he apologized because I was never even able to articulate exactly why the relationship felt so suffocating to me. I would often say I feel suffocated, but that's not much. It's very general. I often felt like I can't breathe here. I just can't breathe. I didn't have the language of codependency at all while we were together. I don't know if he had it either. Either way, we weren't exploring it. And I was so thankful that he brought that up later, because usually if you look at codependent relationships, from the outside looking in, it can look like, so for example, in that relationship, it could look like, well, I just want to talk to you. I really want to talk to you. I really want to work things out. A lot of times people will be like, well, your man wants to talk to you. Isn't that great? He wants to work things out. But let me give you what that looked like. What that would look like is us trying to talk, and like 3 hours, maybe 4 would go by. And then usually, if you've ever been in a very significant, serious romantic relationship with anyone, you know that after the 4th hour of arguing or having conflict, even the conflict doesn't include yelling or swearing or disrespect. After 4 hours, you're pretty tired. It's emotionally exhausting to disagree with someone, especially if it's intense and there's a lot on the line. And I'll be like, hey, I'm so tired. I can't keep going. And he would be like, no, I want to figure this out. I want to work it out. So then I would feel like I really couldn't breathe. I need space. I can't do this. So I would go to another room. He would follow me to the other room. And then we would argue some more. And then part of it would be about the fact that he just won't leave me the F alone. And then another room. Then he would follow me to that room. Child, it was crazy. And so a lot of times what it would look like is we would have 8 to 10 hour sessions arguing because wouldn't leave me alone. Okay. It's really hard when you're in that kind of situation to say, like, this is such a toxic thing for you to do, because that kind of behavior has plausible deniability. Even the next day we could talk to people and they'd be like, well, at least you guys worked it out. No, it took 10 hours. We haven't slept and I'm completely exhausted. And that was an ongoing pattern. That's just one of the ways where his codependency, like, he had such a fear of abandonment and a need for like excessive validation approval from me that it was impossible for me at that part of my life. It was impossible for me to give that to him. But at the same time, that's what codependency is. It is patently impossible for anyone to give the codependent what they need to feel good, because really now we know the person who's codependent needs to come up with that within themselves. I felt drained to the absolute core of my bones after several years. I will say after 10 years of that dynamic, I felt an exhaustion. I don't know how to describe like the level of exhaustion, because when you get to the point where you've said a million times, like, I can't do this for you, I can't be for you what you're needing from me specifically, it ruins the connection. And I'm not, just FYI, I'm not blaming the demise of that marriage on his codependency. I'm just saying, as a topic at hand that has nothing to do with us two, significant codependency can ruin a connection. And it certainly didn't help ours. I will say that, because I'm not talking about anything else but codependency. That's it. I'm not talking about my side and what I did and what he did and all that stuff. Not rehashing. So another big area that codependency really, 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 really like chips away at relationships. And like, think of you and your mom, you and your cousin, you and your baby daddy, you and certainly your partner or your best friends, is when someone's really codependent on you, or if you are very codependent on them, resentment becomes really big. And like I said, my resentment in my first marriage was so big. It was so big. I was so resentful of his neediness on me. Like needing to follow me room to room, not even just during conflict in other areas too. It was just so much. It was so much. But please, like I said before, please know I'm not judging him, because look, I turned around, got married again, and then I became the codependent. So look at God. Look at how God works. You learn one way or the next. Speaking of which, let's talk about how it affects relationships. So oftentimes in a codependent relationship, one person takes on the role of the caretaker. And moving forward, I'm going to be coming from the perspective of us as women who become codependent on the partners that we love, whether they are men, women, or they, them. Typically for us, we become a caretaker, and then the other person becomes dependent on us for our support. And a lot of times that can look like unseen, underappreciated emotional labor. A lot of times, frankly, cishet men have no idea how much emotional labor they're taking from us. That's almost a whole other subject. Over time, codependent relationships produce enmeshment. Just two people who ain't one whole person or one whole person anymore, just one big glob of mess. It also really hinders our personal growth, and it also really produces an environment that keeps us stuck, sick, tired, exhausted. And forget healthy boundaries. Once you're enmeshed with someone, the boundaries are out the window. The resentment, it's like a vicious, horrible cycle, like a snowball that's like rolling down a hill and just getting bigger and bigger. For me, when I was so my second husband was very narcissistically abusive and verbally abusive and literally awful to me. I became codependent on him in a way that I almost didn't understand, because first of all, it came out, like I said, I just came out of a codependent marriage where I didn't quite realize what was going on. But once the abuse started, I realized I really, really, really needed him to be happy with me for me to be happy. That's also called trauma bonding. I was very, very trauma bonded, but that's a subject for another day. But when I look back, I realized I'd become very enmeshed with him during the love bombing phase, when we were first dating and kind of courting and engaged, before we got married, before we got pregnant with my daughter, before the abuse started. It almost completely like erased my identity in a way where I felt like if he's not happy with me, I got to a point where I was shaky. Like if he were angry at me about something, I actually literally felt shaky. I couldn't get peace until I was sure that he was back to a place where he was at peace. Like I said, that kind of dynamic is just, it's just awful. That's what it's like to live in a domestic violence situation, but particularly with emotional abuse at a very heightened level, there is no peace whatsoever. Narcissistic abuse is the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. Hands down. The good news, y'all, is that number one, I did break free from codependency. I did break free from domestic violence. I broke free from trauma bonds. I didn't completely break free from complex PTSD because I still have it, but I have very much managed to figure out how to deal with all that shit. But if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, Grace, you know what? I might be a little codependent. There's hope. I have some suggestions. So this one works for all manner of things, but I gotta say it, self-care and self-love, which I almost feel like it's so trendy that it's getting beaten to a dead horse. Is that the statement? we're beating a dead horse. I don't know. That's a horrible image. Oh my God. Anyway, however, activities that promote personal growth and mindfulness of yourself really do help you come out of codependent behavior. And I was just thinking about this the other day because when I was with my abusive ex-husband, I started doing network marketing. Now, I'm not advocating for network marketing. At this point, I don't think it's a good idea for anybody anymore. However, I have to credit getting into network marketing with helping me to invest in self-development, because I started really getting back into self-development again, which I had before, but I kind of had put it to the side, hadn't really thought about it a lot. But I started being really intentional again. Like, you know what? I want to be a leader. I want a big team. I want to make a lot of money. Let me read some leadership books. And then, I started listening to podcasts and things like that again. I started just reading in general again. And then that led to me meditating, because I heard a lot of people say, well, if you want to be, a big wig in network marketing, you need to meditate. And so then I started meditating, and I realized, I was just thinking about this the other day. When I look back, I'm like, all that shit I was doing to try to grow a network marketing company, like, y'all, it was primarily motivated by that. But that was also motivated by me realizing I had to get the hell out of the marriage. And so I was like, I got to make my own money. I was a stay-at-home mom with our daughter for the first 2 or 3 years of her life. So I didn't have my own money at all. I was completely financially dependent, which, as you know, as in the domestic violence situation, is the worst position to be in. Like, the worst thing you can do to yourself is not be able to get the heezy up out of there. And so it actually produces very, very, very intense symptoms of complex PTSD because of the feelings of feeling stuck. Anyway, so I'm, starting to journal again. I'm doing mindfulness stuff. I'm actually starting to get out into the community, because I was doing like these rap parties, like rap, WRAP. I was doing It Works with the body raps and stuff, which I'm so embarrassed by. Looking back, I'm so embarrassed, but whatever. That's what I did to survive. And you know what? I should have no shame about it, because your girl was out here trying to survive for real, for real. That's where I got the name for this platform, because I was literally like in the fight of my life. But I'm doing all this stuff, not realizing these are all the things that is healthy and good to do just in general. But if you're dealing with major things like trauma bonding, codependency, complex PTSD. I also had acute stress disorder. I mean, there was a bevy of stuff going wrong with me, and all of that stuff was healing me slowly but surely. And I'm up here trying to just, grow this network marketing company, and look at me just growing and healing along the way. I'm proud of myself. But a lot of what that does is it just reconnects you with your own desires, your own needs. And I realized, now that I'm well out of that marriage, the divorce finalized in 2020. So, I'm almost 4 years out of that marriage, and I'm still doing those same things. I'm still practicing mindfulness. I'm still trying to live in the present. I'm still meditating. I'm trying to build a business, not network marketing, thankfully. But I'm still doing my own hobbies. I've gotten back to reading. I'm still trying to treat my complex PTSD through emotional regulation practices in general. I'm still seeing a therapist. I'm just saying that to say, the journey is ongoing, and I don't think we should see it as I'll just do a little bit here and there and then I'll be fine. Because really, that's not it, y'all. This is we are on this lifelong journey to come home to ourselves and fall in love with ourselves the whole way, and do things that help us live in our body and breathe in our body and be in our body, as opposed to somewhere else with someone else. Even if we're happily partnered, it is healthy and so good to have a sense of ourself and what we need and what we want. And that can get very lost if you're codependent. And if you recognize yourself in any of this, you probably have been codependent or are currently codependent. Child, again, no judgment whatsoever, because I have been there probably more than once, but I really look back at that second marriage and I'm like, wow, I was really codependent. And when I look back, honestly, I can see how that was a stressor on him. Is that a justification for him being quite possibly the most abusive asshole he could have possibly been? No, it's not. But I can see how it stressed him when I look back, just like I can look back on my first marriage and see that the way he was codependent was stressing me the F out, for real. Other ways that you can learn and grow in your journey towards being less codependent is to learn to communicate effectively, number one. and communicate in ways that are kind and loving to your partner. Again, this is assuming there's not abuse going on. If you're in that situation, that's a whole different set of advice. But this is, advice you could apply to, like I said, one of your siblings, one of your kids, one of your parents, a romantic partner, whoever, your boss. This is universal advice if you struggle with people pleasing and codependency in general. If you don't ever learn how to assert boundaries, you're probably not going to do very well with stopping being codependent. That's been such a hard thing for me. Again, I try to let y'all know where I'm still struggling, because I just want y'all to know there's other people out there who don't get it all figured out right away. We don't. And I've been in therapy, y'all, and I still really struggling with asserting my boundaries, especially if I perceive the relationship to be so valuable to me that I'm so scared to lose it. And it's a struggle. But one thing I do know that I've learned from my therapist and books I've read is that setting boundaries is crucial, if not the most crucial step in learning how to not be codependent. I also want to tell you to have grace and patience and mercy and love for yourself, because this is a process that takes time. That's not my opinion. Everybody will say that, it's, and not in the way like time heals all wounds, because I don't even believe that bullshit. But time when you're working on something can help as long as you don't think like, yeah, I'm going to think about this tonight, and then when I wake up, I'll have it all together and we'll go about our day. It's not like that. This issue, like changing patterns that we have used for survival for several decades of our life, for most of us between like 30 and 50, we've been operating like this for literal decades. It takes a while to deprogram yourself. So just have patience with yourself is all I'm saying. And always seek therapy if you feel like you need someone who is smarter than you, who's actually studied this. Therapy is not just someone listening to you rant and talk and tell them your problems and let you give you space to cry about it. A good therapist will create a plan to help you deal with these issues. Because just remember, like, a lot of people are codependent, okay? Let's keep it real. For real. And this is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. I think that about all this is not a mental illness, but I think that about all mental illnesses, whether you're bipolar, borderline, autistic, have ADHD, like I said, I have complex PTSD. My mother had pretty severe mental health issues. She was a paranoid schizophrenic. I have had major depressive issues. I'm just listing it out to normalize it. And codependency is not even on that level. It's not even on that level of all that shit I just named. It's not. It's just something we struggle with. So please don't be embarrassed. And not only that, it can be unlearned with the help of a therapist, with good friends, with reading good books like Codependent No More, listening to podcasts like this, and just being on this journey of self-love and self-discovery. Like, if you're on this journey, you're going to get to where you're going, no matter how long it takes. At least you're on the right path. And I hope and pray for all of us that it will lead to really healthy, fulfilling relationships. And I can honestly sit here and tell y'all, like, honestly, cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, okay? That I have a ton of really healthy, fulfilling relationships. I have successfully created boundaries and got out all the people of my life who I felt like were toxic and not good for me. That includes exes, that includes romantic partners, that includes friends with benefits, that includes girlfriends, one of my siblings who's hella toxic. I mean, I had to really clean house in the last 2 years or so, and the relationships I do have, the existing ones, particularly with my girlies, I have three to four-ish, like, beautiful, wonderful, amazing, healthy, kind, loving relationships with women that I absolutely love. Any of the men who I've talked to or are considering talking to or have dated or quasi-dated, it's all good, healthy connections. And I'm just in a really great place where I'm finally learning how to siphon out those who are showing signs of this kind of thing, codependency, or really any sort of toxicity. And I'm also in a place where I myself am not toxic in these relationships or whatever it is, like in romantic settings or with my friends, dating, not dating, it don't matter. I'm in a really good place where I'm bringing a really healthy, fulfilled, full, whole person to these situations. And yeah, one day I do hope I'm in a happily partnered relationship with someone who is a cis het male, because unfortunately I am not gay. So I have to I have to go where I'm loved and where I love with the cis het men, even though they're so damn problematic. But one day I truly completely believe I'll be in a healthy relationship with a man. I just really hope that this episode helps shed some light on this topic, because I think it's such an important thing that's really overlooked. And people might call it jealousy or call it this or call it that. And it's like, nah, there's a bigger name for this. We can put some language on it and we can deal with it, and we can actually live in healthy, happy relationships. So if you're not yet, please don't forget to subscribe to my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm trying to get up and out here, y'all, so please help me. You can find me on the socials at Out Here Trying to Survive. That's on Instagram and TikTok. And on Instagram, I also have a personal account where I share lots of pictures of my kids and just my life every day. It's really just kind of like, my boring life. And that is grace_sandra_. Please join my newsletter list if you want to be up to date on all the things. I have books coming soon. I have some resources coming soon. Every new podcast episode, I share, just a whole bunch of stuff on there. I promise I will never spam you. I will leave you with this, with just a little affirmation. You have come a long way. You have grown. You have pushed through really hard shit. You have survived really hard shit. If that's the case, you owe it to yourself to continue to look into every little thing that could help you lead a more abundant life, but also break generational curses, but also teach your sons and daughters new healthy hacks, but also provide a pathway for healing, hope, and abundance. And those are that was just kind of off the top of my head, but those are words and similar words that I've said to myself over the years, that I deserve the work that I'm trying to do so that I can just be happy. I deserve that. And it's really sometimes really easy to overlook that. But I want you to know you deserve happiness. You deserve peace. You deserve fulfilling relationships. You deserve kindness. You deserve relationships that make you laugh and not cry. You deserve relationships where it is not marked by jealousy and pain and tears. You deserve it. So don't settle for anything less. And part of that settling can be not working on yourself. So don't settle for that either. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.